Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, what an event. I just want to say congratulations once again to Samsung White. We've had just about enough time to catch our breath. We're not finished yet. We're going to talk a little bit about the series, talk about some of the players more in depth, and also look back to our favorite moments from the rest of Worlds, including the group stages and the rest of the knockout stage. Let's quickly talk about Samsung White securing the World Championship title. They also managed to secure the fastest first blood of the entire tournament this series. They had the fastest average game time out of all teams in attendance. They also had the largest kill lead in a World Final series. The records they have are absolutely astounding. Most team kills, highest assists. They've had the highest team KDA. We just want to spend some time celebrating Samsung White. Let's pull up some of those stats that we have just highlighted and maybe start with, Monte Cristo, Samsung White. They lived up to the hype. Dare I say it, for the first time?
Well, not for the first time. Well, I suppose they weren't hyped up initially, but I mean, these stats are just ridiculous. Like back in the days of Champions Spring, they kind of came up and then never reached that peak again. So yes, I'll go with you.
Since they've had hype.
Since they've had hype.
He'll agree with you, but grudgingly.
Sounds like Monte Cristo. Yeah.
All 5 players lead the role in KDA. It helps when you've got a 15-2 overall record, of course. But Freak, Kate, to chime in a little bit more on the team holistically.
Yeah, I mean, overall, this is a interesting team stylistically. I think every team has their own style. It's their instinctive play, how they all play together. This is an early game team. They play aggressively. They look to win all their lanes. Dandy looks for openings all the time. His team is well set up to support him in this endeavor. Mata has some of the best warding ever, and look,
like fans.
And they're all great at interacting with their fans, of course.
You know what? He's a world champion. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
And none of the rest of us are allowed on camera unless we're talking.
And calling them an early game team almost gives them a little discredit. It's not like they fall apart late game. They're just incredibly broken early game. Like, they just destroy people early game, but late game, they're still obviously world class. They can take 30-minute, 35-minute team fights and just take the game.
I feel like this is one of those teams where they are their own worst enemy actually applies, and it's actually truthful. If you look back at the tournament, they finished, what, 15-2? Basically had 2 losses and a whole lot of wins, and both those losses came to at their own hand, picking no wave clear. Yes, their enemies exploited that. Yes, their enemies played that well. No discredit to that, but they dug themselves a hole, and once they realized they've been beaten once, they put that fire back in there, and they immediately close out that next game in a convincing fashion.
Right, both those losses were after they're 2-0 up in a best of 5, and they're like, all right, I think we can take it easy in this one. And then go, whoa, sorry, just kidding, let's try again.
Yeah, I think there's something to say when a team's losses are always really close, and they kind of pick themselves into a hole, and all of their wins are crushing wins. So when I see a team, for example, like lose horribly and win with huge leads, I think they're inconsistent. When I see a team lose by really tiny margins and win by huge margins, I say, oh, they just had a couple bad, kind of unlucky games.
No team, I think, ever on the world stage has made their opponents look as inferior as Samsung White has done to their opponents throughout the course of this World Championship.
Yeah, and if we go back to and talk about SK Telecom T1K last year, they were a team that actually started quite slow. I mean, losing initially to OMG. Meanwhile, in this tournament, Samsung White came out, with guns blazing, took their group without even a loss, and we kind of just saw them get even better from there. So SKTK, a little more of a hiccup, but I think White has been more dominant than last year throughout this tournament.
I feel the same. I definitely feel the same. I think let's start to wrap up our talk about Samsung White the same way we started it. Talk about some of the individual players, maybe guys that stand out for each of us individually. Freak, who's your standout player from White, if you can pick one?
Yeah, my standout is Looper. I talked about him. I jumped at the chance to get to talk about him in the pregame show. He's amazing. Highest KD at Worlds for a top laner. That is a rare sight, and he's done it. That is how damn good Looper is. His teleport plays you talked about at the very beginning of the tournament, Monty, they're very good. He brought in a bunch of new champions, 9 unique ones played. Still, he does have 1 death now on Kassadin, I suppose, but unkilled on Akali, incredible Kassadin play, bringing out assassins, things you don't expect him to play. Even his Singed was good despite having 1 loss here. And he's a fun player to watch. He breaks open what you think of the normal picks. Says, here's how I'm going to do it instead. Great player overall. For like a year and a quarter as a pro.
You touched on that teleport point, and I really need to reiterate that. The zero hesitation on his teleports is what makes him the best, because he will just, every time one of his teammates shouts, help, he'll TP, assess the situation, cancel him at the last second if he has to, or just come out with a beautiful like counter kill, 2 counter kills. He did that in the last game as well. Looper is just such a solid player.
And I must emphasize the fact that he has the highest KDA. Top lane is historically the lane that gets screwed over the most. In 2v1s, you don't get support to ward for you as mid does. Generally, the jungler is not going to hold your hand top lane and ward for you as much as the jungler will ward for mid and bottom, because the jungler should generally be in like the mid side area. The fact that Looper can do this with almost like little to no help and potentially getting screwed over by the enemy jungler all the time, it's just ridiculous how good this guy is.
While playing champions like Cass and Akali who can't do anything pre-6, and it's like, yeah, no, it's fine.
He just teleports bottom. He gets a double kill.
Yeah,
like
whatever,
the
YOLO.
Finals. You talked a lot about junglers. Dandy, come on, hit me up. What do you like? What do you dislike about him as in the jungle?
Oh, wow. Like, I can't sing enough praises about Dandy, but I think the biggest thing is that he adapts to every situation. He's always aggressive, so he doesn't just, like, see a situation he's uncomfortable with and say, okay, I'm just going to play defensive this time. He always finds a way to play aggressive and make the first move. And like I was saying before, Samsung White creates opportunity, and Dandy's generally the one to do that. He goes in the enemy jungler, he deep wards, he says, okay, if their enemy jungler is not on this side of the jungle, then I can dive your mid lane. And he just does it. He always is 2 to 3 steps ahead of the enemy jungler, and that's why he just like babies them around and slaps them in the face like every single game.
Yeah, interesting stat there. Part of 11 First Bloods, played 5 unique champions. His Rengar is undisputedly the strongest in the world. That Game 4 of that series demonstrates it. And White were banning out Rengar and Lee Sin in that series.
Right, and remember, too, 11 First Bloods, but they only played, what, 16 games?
Yeah,
17 games. That's still pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
And before we move on, I just want to highlight that the synergy between Danny and Mata is the reason they were actually both so far ahead in the running for getting MVP here, because sure, you can give it to Mata, you can kind of give it to Danny. Actually, you should give it to both at the same time, because their timing on their vision control is so good. If you've ever played for support and you've tried to team up with your jungle, you will meet up, and one always waits for the other. They don't. They arrive at the exact same time, go into that jungle, place their wards with no double warding, always the right ping course. It's just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I like how you actually talk about the synergy between Dandy and Mata, because actually we all got pulled for our MVP of the tournament. I initially said Looper because I'm fanboying over him the whole time. Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then they were like, okay, well, Looper didn't win. Dandy and Mata got a tie. And I'm like, all right. I guess I'll go with Mata. It's like, still a tie between Dandy and Mata. Can you guys please change your votes up somewhat? These guys are hand in hand as like the big, like, crushing people of the team. And I mean, it shows over and over again how good they are.
Yeah, it really does. Mata in particular is one of the most diverse supports, I think. Regardless of the situation or the team comp, he always seems to have the same incredible impact. We will actually be having an interview with him shortly as the guys are getting set up. Maybe Crepo, share some more thoughts on Mata, and just, I know, let me see if I can paraphrase you correctly. You don't suggest not buying Frost Queen's claim to Mata. You simply ask for his permission to be taught. Am I saying that properly?
See, okay, you can criticize builds all you want, but I mean, when Mata does it, he must have a good reason, and he's clearly shown that he's just ahead of like all the supports in the world, and it's so much fun to see. Occasionally, as a pro player, you will see people do things that are like outside of your range of expectations, outside of your knowledge, and it's fun to actually be schooled and be educated by somebody this good at the game, and it's been such a joy to watch him. He made 0 mistakes almost. Like, if he makes a mistake, he'll recover beautifully. He's just one of the world's best players, and he's definitely the best in his role.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I do believe that interview is ready, so we're going to send it over to the stage where Sharks is standing by with one of our world champions, Mata.